Okay. Hello everyone. First, we are going to. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, thank you for joining us today for this introduction to the Vue Composition API. Thank you for Vue.js Berlin to host us on this evening. Okay, this today's agenda, we are going through a quick Malt introduction. Malt is the company which Nicolas and I are working for. Then we are going to see what's up with Vue 3, and then the composition API in details, and then a live session. Okay, so today your speakers are Nicolas.
Yes, so yeah, Jiri just introduced us, so I don't have a lot of things to add, but yes, I'm working as a front-end developer at Malt, so mostly with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript, and of course Vue.js.
Yes, and yes, like Jerry told you, I'm Sahbi, and I'm working also at Malt as a full stack developer. I like great food. Yeah, I would starve to come to Berlin, but fortunately, it's not possible at the moment. Okay, what about Malt? Malt is a digital talent marketplace #1 in Europe. We have a community of more than 2,000K freelancers and still growing. More than 30K clients did some missions on the platform. And right now we have more than 12K freelancers in Germany. The company was founded in 2013, and we are now more than 2,000 employees. We raised more than 32 million euros, and we are currently implanted in 3 countries, which are France, Spain, and Germany. Okay, that's all for the marketing part. And just before beginning, I'd like to say something about what we are going to show you. This is on the Vue 3 documentation page, and it's very important because right now Vue 3 has been released. Yeah, that's great. But currently, if you are working with Vue and you are working on a concrete and real application, it's considered best to wait until a migration build tool is complete by the core team of Vue to try moving to Vue 3, because it can be quite complicated. So they warn us about it. So try Vue 3, yeah, that's good. But if you try to migrate, just maybe wait a bit. Okay, so what's up with Vue 3? We are going through a quick introduction and quick reminder if you don't know, if you already know this. Vue 3 is called One Piece because Evan Yu is a huge fan of the manga. It was released on the 18th September 2020. As I've just said, there is a release process until the end of 2020, because even if they release the core framework, it's they are considering it not completely finished until all the official libraries are supporting Vue 3. Like a Vuex, Vue Router, etc. In a nutshell, Vue 3 is more than 2 years of development, more than 30 RFC for request for changes, more than 2,060 commits, and a lot of contributors. It's quite great work, as I quoted Evan Yu. So Vue 3, what's Vue 3 basically? There is some exciting new features, like a new mounting and configuration API that will enable us to focus our configuration and concentrate our Vue 3 application in a specific port. There is, of course, a composition API, which is about sharing and reusing reusing specific part of the code. There is a long-awaited new feature, which is teleport, the ability to mount a component in another position of the DOM that can be very useful for models, for example. There is fragments, the possibility to have multiple root nodes on your component, and there is scope style shorthands that you will be able to use in your style scope style component, and will allow you to give a great style to your component. There was the ability to write functional components in Vue 2, but originally writing those components were for performance issues, and right now, as the core framework has evolved, this is not relevant anymore. There is many more improvements like multiple vModel performances, etc. I let you to the Vue 3 documentation for the details about all of that. Of course, there is also some inevitable breaking changes. Some may impact you or not, but some are quite huge. For example, the render API has changed, and then if you used it in Vue 2, of course, you're going to have to deal with it. There is no more event bus. That was quite surprised, but it's all these decisions are really, really well explained in the RFC of the Vue 3 commits. So you can, if you are curious, you can go there and just read the discussion. There won't be any more filters, and there is no Internet Explorer 11 support. Okay. That's all for Vue 3. Now, composition API. Let's focus on this. What can we say about it in a few words? It said that it's a set of additive function-based APIs that allow flexible composition of component logic. Wow, that's big words. Not very clear, but big words. So let's go deep on this. Okay, so first, why the composition API? Vue 2 logic and component were great. You could do many things, like it was easy to write, understandable like a breeze, and you can build small and medium applications really fast. And that was the great thing about Vue. However, what about logic reuse? You can, of course, use services with provide inject mechanisms. You can use mixins, which is sometimes a bit complicated, but you can. There is scope slots, so that's it about logic reuse. But as you can see, there is many solutions, but not only one solution, and a really good one that fits all. And what about code organization? Actually, Vue 2 has a code organization by options. It means that you define option for your component. It's sometimes and many times not very clear, but it's the only option right now. And what about native type inference? By that, I mean TypeScript support. In Vue 2, it's basically complicated, but if you use Vue class component, it's rather good and fun to do. And of course, Vue class component will be supported with Vue 3, so that's great news. Okay, so we saw why. So now, what can we say in detail about the composition API? I'm going through the basic stuff of it until we are going to build something really concrete and real. So first of all, reactive state and side effects. This is the basic components of the composition API. Reactive is the equivalent of the current Vue observable API in the version 2. If you were using the render API, you should have used it. And what it can do, it allows you to declare reactive variables. As you can see here, I can declare a state, which is a reactive object with a count value at 0. And what is watch effect? Watch effect is a mechanism that allows us to watch the state count variable and will indeed update the HTML part. This is what we call a side effect. Okay, so let's go further. We have now computed state and refs. Computed state are like the computed like we already know it, and we can declare it like that. And what is important here, it's double, the variable double that we declared as a computed, is now an object that we call ref. A ref because it's serving like a proxy. It's using a proxy, a JavaScript proxy, to serve like a reactive reference to the internal value that's wrapped in this object. It's very important here to know that this value are wrapped in an object and can be only accessed by the dot value here, as you can see on the console log, because the double reference is just a ref and not the value of your object. Okay, so let's use it in components. I can declare a method that's called setup. It's not it's not random that I named it like that. And here I declared a state, which is reactive, and of course, with a value count and a computed, we have a method increment, and I return those values, state and increment. Now, when I watch effect and have a template, my render context will be rendered every time it changes. Okay, so we saw what we can do here. It's a bit unclear, fuzzy, I know. And just to be clear, there is no component instance declared here yet. So let's see that. Here we have a more common component writing style with the template and the script part. And basically, we just let Vue do the mechanism of calling setup method, create watchers, and render the template that we just did manually in the slide before. So now we can declare a setup method, which will be called by Vue directly. And we have our state and our method increment. And the view will be rendered automatically in our component. Okay, so it's a bit messy. It's fine, but it looks like a complex way to declare variables, and it looks way more complicated than the existing option API so far. Yes, you're right, but that's not what the composition API is about. The composition API aims to better code organization, particularly in complex components. That's why in a basic component that will do only one thing and it will do it nicely, there is no concrete evidence of using the composition API. For example, have you ever faced a component that you or not, maybe you did not write it, but a component that does 2, 3, 4 or more things? It's really complicated to explain quickly what the component is about, what it tried to accomplish, what it tried to do. Composition API acts here as a mechanism to define logical concerns of your component that you will be able to define like X, Y, Z. It will be like a verbal description of your component. Your setup method was a part you did not write before, yes, but it will serve for the better of your component, and all your fellow developers will be happy to see it there. Okay, and now what is about logic extraction and reuse? Here I just present you a quick method, a quick method that will follow the mouse movement. It will declare two refs, X and Y, and will be updated by the unmounted event listener I declared here, and will enable me to follow the mouse. It's a complete and dedicated logic in a single function, exported function. And if we try to use it in our component, we can do it like this. Once again, in our setup method, we use mouse position and we just get our X and Y variables. And we return them, because if you want to use them in the template part, you have to do it like this. But what is great about this, you can have many logics that will go there. And your setup part of your component will just be a clear definition of what your component is going to use and what is going to be happening in your component. Okay, so it was only theoretical, it was quick, but now let's go with a concrete example by Nicolas.
Right. Sahbi explained you a bit about the composition API, and now we're going to see it live in a real-world use case, I would say. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so as I hope you all can see, here we have developed a simple application that is a jobs board. So it's using Vue 3, but it was written with the option API, so as a Vue 2 application. So I'm just gonna go to the different components that compose this application, and then I will go into the code. So let's imagine that you are, for example, an HR people, and you want to use this application to handle some jobs at your company. So, for example, you have some draft jobs and then published jobs, and you can have your own list of jobs. And then from this draft, you can either publish them, or you can, for example, promote these jobs in the published list. So here we have the 3 views, actually. So mine, all draft, and all published. And in all draft and all published, we see that we have 2 features mainly. We have a filter feature, so we can filter the list on a simple search on the titles. We have these 2 filters, remote only and full-time only, to find all the full-time jobs. Then we have an order feature right here. So we can order the list by title, location, last updated, or also the most candidates, for example, in published jobs. Right. So there's this little select right here that will allow you to show the connected user and to show the list of the connected user. So here, if I'm connected as Nicolas, I have my own list of draft and published jobs. And if I switch and go as Sahbi, Sahbi has his own list of draft and published. So this is just, for example, in a real world application, you could, for example, have a screen where you can log in. But right here, we just wanted to see that when you change the identity, the list is refreshed. So how is this application composed? We can see it in the DevTools. So actually, we are using here a component that's called the jobs header. So it contains our 3 router link, so our 3 views right here. And then the router view right here will just display either the jobs mine component or the draft component right here, or all the published jobs. So these components, jobs draft and jobs published, use a jobs list component that handle all of our job item. And in jobs mine, you can see that we don't use jobs list because we have 2 sub-lists. We have a list of drafts and we have a list of published. All right, so let's go see the code. So our first view, jobs mine, right here, so use 2 sublists, so draft jobs and published. So these lists come from 2 computed that are right here. And as you can see, we are using a mixin right here, jobs mixin. So this mixin gives us this data, these jobs. That is the list that's populated from, we have a little backend that's running that gives us all the job items. And this mixin is also used in the 2 other views, jobs draft and jobs published. So we are using this mixin, and we are giving the view to the mixin. And right here in jobs published, we are using it right here. So it allows us to use the jobs data right here, and also right here. So in jobs mine, to handle the list refresh when we change the connected user, actually we are watching a computed, and this computed is called connected user, and it also comes from the jobs mixin. So in this mixin, we have the data, jobs data, that's returned right here. We have this computed, so actually the connected user is comes from the store. We are using a Vuex store because it comes from the header. So the header needs to send the mutation to update the connected user. And then we are watching this data, and we just call fetch my jobs when the data is updated. So we are using this mixin because in the mounted hook, we can either, if we are in the mine view, fetch, let's say fetch my jobs, which is this method, or we can fetch all jobs, which is this method, and that's called in these two different components. So here, in this case, the mixin is quite, I mean, it's a good use case of mixin, but as you can see, if you just watch the components, it's not clear in the first view. You can wonder where does the data comes from, like for example, where these jobs comes from and where this connected user comes from. Right here, the component is really simple, so you can guess that jobs come from the mixin. But if you have a more complex components, it can becomes blurry very fast. So first thing we are going to do is we are going to see how the composition API can help us to replace this mixin and actually have something that's more visual and something that's more understandable in the first view. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. We will call it use. And inside this folder, we are going to create our modules, and we're going to create all of our composition functions. So the first one we're going to create is a composition function that will handle the jobs fetching and the populating of the list. So let's call it jobs.js. So we are going to export a function that we will call use jobs. So we use this kind of name like use something because when you use this in your components, you can see in just by looking the components that right here in this place, you will use this feature. So I think that's a good way of naming the functions. So use jobs, what do we want? We want actually this data. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a reactive reference for this data so that when it's changed, the changes will be reflected in the templates. So we are going to import the ref function from Vue. And that's this function that will allow us to create the reactive reference. We are going to create our jobs, just like an empty list at the beginning. Then we are going to just return this data right here. So this is just enough just to get the jobs list. So let's start with jobs draft because this is the simplest component. So we're just going to remove this. We will remove our mixin. And then we are going to use the setup function as Sahbi explained in the presentation. And right here, we are going to use our composition function. So let's get our jobs. All right. And if we want to use these jobs in the template right here, we need to return it from the setup function. So let's just do this. Right, so let's see. So it's not going to work, obviously, because it's not populated yet. But as you can see in jobs draft, now we have the jobs data that's right here. And you can see that it's a reactive reference. So what we want to do right now, so we can do like quickly the same right here in jobs published. Right, so we don't need the mixin more. So what we want to do is on the mounted hook, we want to execute this method, fetch all jobs. So what we are going to do is we are going to get this method right here, we will put it here. So it's a sync function. We will write it as an arrow function. Let's go fetch all jobs. Sync. And what it's going to do is that it's going to populate this list. So we don't have the this right here. So what we will do is just take jobs, and of course, as jobs is a constant, we can't reassign it. So as Sahbi told you, when you use ref, it creates a wrapper around this array. So to just populate the list, you have to use the value property that will allow you to put things into this array. And of course, we need these small helpers right here. We just put here. All right. Okay, so we need this category, as you can see. So this category is just used to know if we are fetching the draft or the published jobs. So that's something that we can pass to our functions right here. So let's put it here. Right. And right now, we will just return our not right here, sorry. We'll just use actually the unmounted hook, because that's the hook you can use in the composition API to execute functions when your component will be mounted. And so it's used this way. And right here, we are going to execute fetch all jobs. And here we will pass the category. Because it's a sync function, I will put the await right here. Okay. All right, so let's see. Okay, that's cool. We have our list right here also, but as you can see, there are the same list because I didn't specify the category when I was in the component. So let's go back to jobs draft and put right here draft. And then let's go put right here published. And now it should be better. Right. Awesome. So we have our draft jobs, and you can see that the filtering is still working. Right. You can see that the ordering is still working. Yes. Perfect. So let's focus now on the main view. So on this view, what we are doing differently is that we are using these two computed. So let's remove the mixin and let's use our setup function. So as jobs draft, we are going to do this exactly the same. Here we will specify mine and see. So as you can see, it fetch everything because we didn't write this little if right here. So let's take this fetch my jobs methods first. We will put it here. Right. So know this, we still have to use the value. And then there is this this connected user ID right here. So this is a data that we can pass to our composition function. So let's put it here. Need this right anymore. Okay. Right, and then let's take just this small if. Okay. Right, and then we don't have this category. All right. So it should work, I think. Did I forget something? Cannot read ID of undefined, of course. So as we didn't pass the connected user right here, it doesn't work. So how can we pass the connected user? So what we could do is get it from the store the Vuex store. But I'm going to show you that using the composition API, we can avoid using Vuex in this simple case. So it's always interesting if you have a complicated application to use Vuex because of the support of the dev tools, etc. You can see what happens. But in this very simple use case, you can do something else. You can use the composition API and use another hook. So we are going to create a new function that we'll call users. This function is going to handle the users in our job header component. So the job headers component, just you can see right here, define just 2 users, and just use this connected user as the V model right here. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this, put it in our new function. So export default function use users. So we are going to import also ref from Vue because we need a reactive reference for the connected user. And then, so as you can see, I'm putting this right here, not inside the function, but over the function over on the top, because we want the connected user to be a global state inside across all of our components. So connected user will be a reactive reference. And we are initiating at first users item, right? Then this function is just very simple. It just returns just this data, the users and the connected users. Right. So let's just use it in this component. So we can remove this. We can just remove all this data right here and use the setup function instead. All right. So we have users and connected user. Okay, we have to return them. This thing of returning everything in the setup function is like I think it's the biggest pain point, if I can say it's a pain point, but for the moment we still have to do this. Maybe it will change in the future. Maybe you can have some ID helpers or something. But, all right, so it should work. I mean, yes, as you can see, the list is still populated right here, so that's fine. It works. So we can remove this because we don't need it right here in this component. So as you can see, this component now is very, very simple. It just does one thing and very simple. So right now, let's go back to our jobs mine. And what we want to do now is just get back this connected user and pass it down to our use jobs function right here. So what we're going to do is just get this connected user. We don't need the users anyway, just need the connected user. Use users. And now we can pass it right here. Connected user. Right, so let's see. All right, nothing's happening. Normal. Because now, as connected user is a reactive reference, when we want to access it through the ref, we need to use the value access. Because as it's a wrapper around the real value, we need to use this value. So if we do this, yes, it should work better. Right, so as I initiated this data to my name right here, I only have my list. So now I still need to do something when I change the identity. So without using Vuex, we can do something quite simple here thanks to the composition API. So we can just import the watch function from Vue. So it's like almost the same as the watch effect that Sahbi explained. It's just that the watch function, you can just watch a specific property, a specific reactive data. And what we want to do is we want to just watch the connected user. So we just need to pass the connected user here. And now we just need to execute a function each time the connected user change. So what is this function? This function comes from use jobs. So this function is the fetch my jobs. So what we just need to do is return it from here. And then in our jobs mine, we can import it now. We can extract it and then execute it anytime the connected user change. So let's see if that works. All right, works. Okay, that's great. So as you can see now, the jobs draft and jobs published are still simple. So okay, there is more code that when we were using the mixin, but I think anyway, in my opinion, I think it's clearer to see where the data comes from, because you can see right here that it comes from use jobs. And then in jobs mine, we can see what it does pretty simple also, because we see that we get the connected user, we see that we get the jobs, and that each time the connected user change, we execute this function. So I think it's more simpler now. One thing that I didn't change right here is that, oh yes, so we don't need this anymore, is that the computed right here, they're still using the template right here and right here. And there is another way to handle computed functions, computed getter with the Vue composition API, but we can just keep it that way for the moment. I will show you in another example. It's just that, as you can see, the composition API is very optional. You can use it, also mix it with the option API, even though I wouldn't advise it because it could lead to some complicated things. So now let's go to the component that does two things mainly, and it's a jobs list. So what it does, it handles the filters, and it also handles the ordering. So we are going to use a two composition function to handle this, so that it becomes more clear. So we are going to create a filters.js. We'll start with the filters, and we are going to focus on right now this component, so jobs list. So as you can see in the template, jobs list handle the filters right here. Then it handles the ordering right here, and it handles the list right here. So in this component, when you look at the different options right here, you can see that we have the data. So we have the filters, we have the ordering, then we have a computed to handle the filters. Inside this computed, so yeah, first we handle the ordering, we pass the filters. So that's kind of it's still pretty simple. So it's not really a mess, but it can be a mess if it's bigger. And then we have these two methods that are used for the filtering. So let's go and extract each of these features in their own composition function. So first we need this. So let's do the same, export default function. We'll call it use filters. And we will just create this time also reactive reference, but we will use this function, reactive from Vue. So the difference with ref, actually ref is using reactive under the hood, so it's not very different. But reactive, you don't need to access your value. You don't need to access your object, your data with the value accessor. You can just get it right here. And I think it's quite good to use it when you need to create like an object with different reactive property inside. So let's create. So we have this filters. Oh, we can call it the state because it will be the internal state of our component. Reactive, right? And then we are going to return this. So what we can do is we can return the state directly. But if we do this in our component, we'll have to we will have to just use state.query, state.remote only, state.fulltime only, etc. So what we can do is use the toRefs function and then return this. So what does toRefs is it takes every property of the state and creates a reactive reference for every property. So it allows us to import it this way, as I'm going to show you. So let's remove it. Let's remove them and create our setup function. And now we can just import this query remote only, full-time only, equal use filters. And we still need to return everything. Okay, right, let's see if the data are still right here. All right, so it works just by using the data somewhere else. Okay, nice. So now what we are going to do is we are going to take this computed filtered jobs, and we are going to put this in our composition function. So what we want is the filtered jobs. So we are going to create a computed, because what we want is we want this this function, this computed, to be called every time the jobs list is changing. We are going to import the computed from Vue, and we are going to use it right here. Right. So know these. The jobs is the list that we are going to pass to our function, and then so these are just helper methods. So just remove these. It's right here. Right. And okay. Yes, and then we want to return the filtered jobs, of course. Right, and we need these methods. So we are going to, so I'm going to just comment out this thing and just take out this method. So I will remove all of this. Where was I? Here. All right, so just let's create arrow functions with this. Right. So here we're not using this anymore. Of course, we are using state.query. So as you can see, we don't need to use state.value.query because we are using reactive. Okay. Same with remote. So it's not this remote only anymore, it's state. Right, and the last one. Yes. Okay, same here, state. Right. Okay, oh, so right here. Then if we want to return the two refs, the state in the subject, of course, we need to use the spread operators so that it returns query, remote, full-time, and filter jobs. All right, so let's see. So we are going to get our filter jobs from the function and return it right here so we can use it in the template. So we are using this time this filtered jobs right here. So let's see. So of course here it doesn't work. We are not passing the jobs list. So the jobs list comes from the props. So in the setup function, when you want to access the props, you need to use this the first param that is an object and that represents the props of your component. So if we want to use the jobs list, we can use it this way: props.jobs. Right? And still doesn't work because as we are using the props.jobs like this way, actually we are getting the list before it is populated by the fetch method. So what we want to do is we want to pass a computed. So we need to import computed from Vue. And then that's what we are going to pass right here in our function. All right. So every time the list is going to change, we are going to use filters. And now it still doesn't work because when you pass a computed, you need to access it by value because it creates a reactive reference. So as jobs is a computed, you need to access it this way: jobs value, that filter. Now it should work. Yes, perfect. So let's see. All right. Only, yes, full time only, perfect. Work right here. Nice. So as you can see, the component is becoming a little bit simpler because right here we can see that we use the filters we have the data, and you will see that we won't need this anymore. So now let's do the last composition function for the ordering. So let's create the order by. So we are going to call it use order by, and we will pass the jobs also right here. So in the order by function, we just need, as a reactive data, we just need the order by vmodel. So we are going just to import the ref from Vue, and we are going to get these. So I can remove now all the data. Oh, sorry, I clicked a bit fast. Yes. And I'm going to put them here. So we don't need to create reactive references for order fields because they're just here to populate our dropdown, but we need this reference for order by. Right, and what we need to return, I've quote, return order fields and order by. Right, so let's use them. Actually, I'm going to close all of that. Let's use them right here. Order fields, order by. Right, so we are going to pass the jobs list, but what we want to do is we want to pass the filter jobs. So let's get the filter jobs and pass it right here. And then we are going to remove the filter jobs right here because we will rather use ordered jobs list. We are going to use order fields and order by. Right, so now it's broken because we don't have a list anymore, but we are going to recreate it right now. So now what we want is this order by function right here. So let's put it here. We're going to create ordered jobs, which is a computed, and it will use the order by from Lodash. Right, and then we are just going to remove all of that because now we have just our jobs. So as jobs is a computed, it's filter jobs, we need to use the value to access it. And we are going to use order by. So as it's a reactive reference, we also need to use value. And then this order is something that we have in our component. I'm going to take it. It's just a helper function to get actually the order direction regarding the field. So let's create another computed. We'll call order and import computed. And we will just use these order fields. And we need order by value. And it will return our order. So this property right here. Okay, so as it's a computed now, we need to use value. Right. I forgot a parenthesis. Yes. Okay, so let's return this list. And now we can use it right here. Oh, I forgot to get it from here. Right. So let's replace it in the template for the jobs. Right, let's remove all of that. Now it should work perfectly. I hope. Yes. Let's sort. No candidate on draft, but yeah, last updated works. Location, yes. Title, all published, as you can see. Filter are still working. Title, location, candidates, right. All right, so everything's working. And as you can see, the jobs list component became really simpler now, because we can see that we are using two features. We are using filters and we are using order by filters. So yes, that's a bit of a lot of data to return, but still I think it's simpler than using the option API. Right, so this is it. We showed you two cases of the composition API, how you can replace a mixin and how you can make a component simpler and more understandable, but by separating the different concerns. So this is it for me. I'm going to stop sharing, and thank you all for watching this.